Hi, and welcome back to Biblical Theology, Exegesis, and Hermeneutics, where meaning is always context-driven. I'm your host, John Strazisich, and today we'll be finishing up our series here on the Questionnaire concerning biblical cosmology. Okay, then coming here, these are the 10 questions to test yourself to see if you have a biblical cosmology or if indeed you have a man-made cosmology. And what we've been doing in this series is, can you find your cosmology in the Bible? And probably a little more prying than that, do you think the Bible has a cosmology? And that's probably going to be a little tougher for some of you to swallow, that the Bible actually does have a cosmology, and it's important to find out what it is. And when you start investigating the biblical text, where you're going to find out that the Copernican model is foreign to the biblical text. And that's what we've been finding out in these questions, such as, do you believe the earth is orbiting the sun? Do you believe the earth is spinning to create night and day? Do you believe the moon is a reflector of the sun's light? Do you believe the firmament is just the atmospheric expanse? Do you believe the sun is a star? Do you believe the earth is a planet? Do you believe that God created the planets? Do you believe that stars are massive and far, far away? Do you believe the sun is stationary in relation to the earth? And lastly, what we're focusing on here today, and wrapping it all up, is, do you believe the earth is a sphere? And so when you actually begin to examine the biblical text will speak in such a manner that to think of, if you answered the affirmative in any of these questions, you can't find that cosmology in the Bible. And since you can't find your Copernican view of in the Bible, then that means you have a man-made cosmology. It's inimical to the biblical text. If you want to be biblical, well, then you got to find out what the Bible has to say about all these subjects, and that's what we've been doing in this series. Okay, then coming here, then putting it all together, what we've done so far. Last week we looked at the text of Amos 9:6, where it said that and his agudato he founded upon the earth. Okay, so this is where the modern translations are going to say, and he fastened his vault. He founded it upon the earth. So that's why in these ancient Hebrew cosmologies is that you have a flat earth, and the firmament is firmly attached to the earth. And that's exactly what we read there in Amos, is that Yahweh built in the upper chambers of heaven, his upper chambers, and he founded his vault upon the earth. So that means that the earth is bounded by heaven itself, that is the firmament, and that is firmly attached to the earth. So that's how you get this this view of the earth is flat, and then you have this dome structure above it. And then you could, as we read, we saw earlier in Genesis chapter 1, where when God made the sun, and he made the moon and the stars, okay, and these all take up various, height differences within the firmament, and we saw that the stars are all up high, they're up in the highest realm of the firmament, and then down below we see the moon and we see the sun, and these are different distances above us, but they're all inside of the blue dome. okay, which Amos says that he fastened to the earth, okay. And we looked at that, but we know from Genesis 1:14 and 15 that God put the sun, moon, and stars inside of the firmament. So in the firmament part of the heavens, which would be the second heaven, and then the first heaven would be from the surface of the earth up to the highest, cirrus clouds, and then above that we're going to start to relegate to the second heavens, which is the realm where the ether begins, and up to the top of the dome that we all live underneath. And remember, this is David's metaphorical tent. So if you have a tent, David's, and Isaiah, these prophets both speak of, one a prophet, one a king. They speak of the our universe as a tent that we all live inside of. Well, you don't pitch a tent over something round. You pitch a tent on flat ground, okay, and that this is all underscoring the notion that the Bible presents a flat type earth, and we know that water is level. Whether it's it's in your bathtub, or if it's in the pool, or if it's in a pond, or if it's in the Pacific, when water bottoms out and it's left undisturbed, water is always flat on its surface, and that's why we have the term sea level, okay, and that's why we have levels that have water in them with the bubble to create what's level. And all parking lots of all the world are all graded for water runoff, okay, and so we know that water always runs downhill, and there's nothing basically lower than the oceans, and that's how that's where it all bottoms out. And that's why people have always, conceived of the world as flat, because water's flat, and there's really nothing much lower than the oceans, other than maybe the Salton Sea in California and the Dead Sea over in Israel, which is the lowest part of the earth. But what we're just trying to say is that we're trying to get the understanding of biblical cosmology. We saw that that the sun is going around in circles above the flat earth, according to Psalm 19. You can go look at Psalm 19 verses 5 to 6, and you'll see there that the earth is what's moving. The sun is what's moving in these texts. And we saw last time in Isaiah chapter 38 verse 8, where the sun was also, the prophet described the sun is what was moving. And as far as these tent metaphors, David in Psalm 19, I believe it's in verse 4, the sun is inside of the tent, which is the firmament in context. And likewise, we, Ecclesiastes 1:5, that, Solomon said that the sun is what's moving. The sun rises, the sun sets, and the sun hastens to rise there again. So he, all the biblical authors attribute, movement, to the sun, not the earth spinning, like Joshua said. The sun and the moon stood still. Okay, because the sun, moon, and stars in the biblical text are what's moving above us. Okay, for those with a Copernican view, the moon stopped, but the earth stopped spinning. but Joshua said that the sun stood still and the moon. Okay, it didn't say anything about the earth, but in the way that we were all deceived in the Copernican view was that, when Joshua called for the sun to stop and the moon to stop, we believe, the moon stopped, because it's moving. But the sun, no, it didn't stop. The earth stopped spinning. So this is all foolishness to destroy biblical authority in that way. And you would, especially when you look at Psalm 19, when you look at Joshua, 10, 12, and 13, and Isaiah chapter 38, Ezekiel, Ecclesiastes 1:5. And all those other scriptures that we've mentioned, they all talk about the sun, moon, and stars are what's moving, above us, and the earth is flat, the earth is still, the earth doesn't move, the earth is founded and fixed, and it cannot be moved. Okay. And this is truly when you read through the Bible, that is the Bible's cosmology, and most people would think this is foolishness, but when you start looking into what NASA's been doing, you're going to find out that everything they told us has been a lie. Okay, then coming to the question, do you believe the earth is a sphere? So we're going to look at a few biblical texts which would lend support to understanding that we don't live on a sphere, but indeed the earth is flat. And I want to go to the last book of the Bible, and we'll look at a few scriptures here. And just by way of coming to the book of Revelation, in Revelation 1:19, the risen Christ who appeared to John on the island of Patmos, gave him a command, and the text says, "Therefore, write which you have seen, and the things which are, and the things which are necessary to take place after these things." Okay, this famous saying here of the metatauta. So we look at the things that you have seen, and that was the vision of chapter 1 of the risen Christ, and then the things that are, and that's the message to the 7 churches, pretty much, and then that which will take place after these things, and that's kind of what we're seeing in chapter 4, 1 following. Okay, is the things that are taking place later, and that's important for us to see here, and then we can, and when we come here to 4:1, it says metatauta adon. After these things I saw, and behold, a door was open in heaven, and the first voice which I heard as a trumpet speaking with me, saying, "Come up here, and I shall show to you things which is necessary to take place after these things." So then this then begins the thematic verse here of 1:19, things that are, the things that you saw in the past, the things that are in the present, the message to the 7 churches, and what will take place after these things. Well, then all begins here in Revelation 4:1, and I'll show to you which things are necessary to take place after these things, metatauta. And so then this then begins where then John goes up to heaven, and he's standing on top of the firmament. What does he see? He's a door open in heaven, and he sees a sea of glass like unto crystal. okay, and a throne upon it, and God sitting upon it, and an emerald rainbow about God. Well, that's exactly what Ezekiel showed to us in Ezekiel 1 when, above the firmament, above the heads of the cherubim were what was a firmament like unto crystal. Okay, that was stretched out above their heads. Well, then that's talking about, it's a microcosm type vision of creation. Okay, and every scholar is going to say that. There's nobody that's going to differ from that. And then all scholars, when they come here to Revelation 4:6 here, when John sees the sea of glass, you'll see that they all connect it back to Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 22. Okay, or 21, they're back to the firmament that's crystalline in nature, and he sees this sea of glass like unto crystal, and a throne, and that's what Ezekiel saw. He saw God's throne and a rainbow round about God who was seated upon it, and that's what John the Revelator also sees, and he adds that it's an emerald rainbow. So anyhow, these are important things. So then at this point, John is in heaven. Okay, so I wanted to go through these scriptures so that you'd understand how Revelation is written thematically, about the things that were and the things that are and the things that shall be. And the things that shall be all kind of start here in 4:1 here, when he goes up to heaven and he's up on top of the sea of glass, standing up on top of above the dome, life above the dome. Okay, and this is where he eventually sees the 144,000 singing the song of Moses and the Lamb, standing on the sea of glass, singing, "Great and marvelous are thy works, Lord God Almighty." So that's what they're singing up on top of the firmament upon the sea of glass. But John also has something else to say. So from the balcony of heaven, from the vantage point of 4:1, he sees a series of visions. So it says, "After this I saw 4 angels standing upon the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, in order that the wind might not blow upon the earth, nor upon the sea, nor upon any tree." Okay, and so this is what so John's, from the vantage point of looking over the balcony of heaven, when he looks down and he's recording this vision, he didn't say "I imagine," he didn't say "I kind of thought something," or I'm speaking in Hebrew idiomatic language. No, he says "I saw." So either he saw it or he didn't. Okay, so this is a vision, and these are the things that is necessary for him to see and record. So he sees from the advantage point of heaven looking down. He saw the 4 angels standing upon the 4 corners of the earth. Now, I don't think he's looking down from heaven and seeing a sphere. Okay, because I don't know anybody who if they went to heaven and they looked down and they saw a sphere, would ever describe seeing something where I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 the 4 winds. I've never, you could never imagine that he's looking at a sphere. But to understand he's looking at a flat earth, well, that makes sense. Now, just like how we destroy Calvinism, you just keep reading the text, okay? So here, likewise, if you just keep reading the text, then you'll see that he's not speaking in idiomatic language of just some idiomatic phrase. What does he say? And I saw another angel coming up from the east, the rising of the sun, having the seal of the living God. And he cried out with a great voice to what? To the 4 angels. So these 4 angels standing on the 4 corners, he sees a 5th angel, another one that's coming up from the east of the sun, having the seal of the living God, and he cries out to these 4 angels that he sees positioned on the 4 corners of the earth, and to whom was given to them to injure the earth and the sea, saying, "Do not injure the earth, nor the sea, nor the trees, until we have sealed the servants of our God upon their foreheads." Okay, so here, he's definitely looking down from heaven. He sees, something more in line with what we would imagine of a flat earth. Definitely he's not looking at a globe. Anyone looking at a globe would never say he saw the 4 angels standing on the 4 corners. That's not happening. That's not within the realm of possibility. So as you keep reading the text, it's very clear that he's now a 5th angel in verse 2. And then going into 3 comes into play, and now he's giving a message to these 4 angels that are positioned on the 4 corners of the earth, and he's speaking to them. So if this vision has any bit of reality, just like we saw in the vision that began here in chapter 4, well, he said he went up to heaven and he saw God, he saw the sea of glass and the throne and the 24 elders and the rainbow. Well, if this isn't true in 7:1, well, neither is that true up there in Revelation chapter 4 and 5. None of that's true either. Okay, but this is a vision, and this is what he saw, and the vision does communicate knowledge, and he says, "I saw." Okay, so he's seeing this vision. So when he looks down from the balcony of heaven, he doesn't see a ball earth. He sees something flat. Okay, so this would definitely lend support here to understanding, David's tent. That would be definitely, you pitch a tent on flat ground. Okay, all right. There you go. It's pretty much that simple. You don't pitch a tent on top of something round. You can't sleep on something round. You sleep on something flat. So for the imagery to work, it had the appropriate symbols and metaphors have to be applied, and they are, and they make sense. Okay, but none of this that we see here is ever depicting the earth as spherical. Okay, then coming to this slide, we're looking here at Job, and we're looking at chapter 38, and we'll pick this up here, and he begins here. God finally appears in the book of Job, and the text states, "Vaya'an Adonai et Iyov min hasa'ara vayomer, mizeh machshik etza, b'milin b'li da'at, etzarna kegever halatzecha ve'esh alcha v'hodi'eni." And then he says here, "Epo hayita b'yosdi eretz." And where were you when I founded the earth? So this text here just states, and it starts off here, and Yahweh answered Job from the whirlwind and said, "Who is this who causes counsel to be darkened with words without knowledge? Gird up now your loins as a man, and I shall ask you, and make known to me." And then he says, apo here, hayita be yosdi aretz, okay, where were you when I founded, the earth, okay? So obviously, Job is going to be clueless here, and that is what God's trying to get Job's attention, that Job has no clue of what's going on. Remember, chapters 1 and 2 were, the work of the editor, and Job had no idea of what, that God had made a wager with the devil, and, and God said, have you considered my servant Job? And then the devil said, oh, well, Job only serves you because you have a hedge built up around him, and he serves you because, you give him all kinds of material blessings, but take that away and he'll curse you to your face. So then that's basically, this whole book of Job is, God teaching the devil a lesson that unlike the devil himself, men serve God because of who God is, not because of what God can give them. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that all men do that, but you can read the prayer of Jabez, but anyhow, God by and large does, operate with a retribution type theology, because in the end God does bless Job for what happened and reversed everything, but it's all mixed. Okay, we don't understand all the things that are happening to us behind the veil, so to speak. Okay, we don't know what's going on, so that's why he starts off here, mize mach shiketza, who is this who causes counsel to be darkened, bemilling with words without knowledge. Okay, so you and I, when we're trying to understand our way in life and what's going on and what's happening to us, we don't see it from from God's perfect perspective. So if we try to interpret it, that we can end up darkening God's counsel, with words without knowledge. So because it just means that we don't see everything perfectly. Okay, so that this means that life here on earth is a walk of faith. We have to walk by faith and not by sight. Okay, and that we have to rely in that we have a good God, and that He will straighten everything out. We don't need to understand everything, and that's what God's teaching Job here. And if you ever got to this portion of the book of Job, God doesn't answer Job and doesn't tell him what happened. So that just means you have to live by faith and just trust that God knows what's going on. And thank God for the editor of the book of Job, that where we have an understanding of why Job was struck. Well, because God made a wager with the devil, and the devil said, well, Job doesn't serve you, for nothing. He's doing it for material blessings. Take away the blessings and he'll curse you. So that's kind of how the whole book of Job got going, and God taught the devil a lesson that, unlike the devil, men do serve God because they love God, and that God is good. And God does eventually, restore all the mishaps and misfortunes of Job, and blesses him twofold in the latter end. But it doesn't mean that Job didn't go through hell, and he surely did. But when God finally showed up in the Sahara, in the whirlwind, okay, so if you see God coming to you in a whirlwind and says, who is this who darkens, counsel with words without knowledge? Well, you better shut your mouth pretty quick. But God's not wanting that. He says now, gird up now, your loins as a man. I will ask of you, make known to me, So God's demanding some answers from Job. And God knows, that Job isn't going to be able to answer these questions. There's about 40-some questions that he answers. He asks them. And Job doesn't have a clue, and, most of us don't either. But some of this, especially verses 4 through 7 here, do offer some, a little flavor, kind of in much the same way that Revelation did. That it kind of gives a little hint of, of a way of understanding how God did make the earth. And so you can't say that you can't build theology off of how God speaks to Job. If you're telling me that God's words are just gobbledygook, and that you can't build theology off of what he says to Job here, well, I think, I don't think that anyone should be listening to you. And indeed, this is written in poetry, and it's definitely disputation speech. So this is, this has definitely got some, some reasoning behind it. So he says, where were you when I founded the earth? Declare if you know with Bina, with understanding. Who made its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched out a line upon it? Upon what were its bases sunk? Or who cast its cornerstone? When, this is, when the Chocheve Voker, when the stars of the morning, or when the morning stars sang together, and all of the B'nai Elohim shouted, okay? And then when we come to verse 8, we're going to have he's going to talk about the sea. And when we come to verse 12, he's going to talk about using the elements of the earth in with means of, a retributive judgment upon the wicked, all right, upon the Rishaim here. And then here talking more about the springs of the earth and the gates of death, and then down here 19, talking about where is the place that light dwells, okay? But we can see here that, when he's talking about this language here, when God founded the earth, okay, so it's based on some type of foundation, okay, that's not spherical. He stretched out a line upon it, or made its measurements, okay, and who stretched out a line upon it here at the end of verse 5, and upon what were its bases sunk? Well, that's not talking about no spherical earth. And who cast its cornerstone? Okay, so this is all just talking about, making a building upon a flat surface, okay? And so, it has more in line to do with understanding the earth is, flat. It's definitely not talking, in that would lend for any thoughts to go towards that God created a spherical earth. Now, I'm not saying God couldn't have created a spherical earth. It's just not what God chose to reveal in Scripture, okay? And when we come to verse 8, and who shut up the sea with doors when it burst forth from the womb and came out? When I placed a cloud for its clothing, and and for darkness, it's swaddling band, and I broke against it my decree, and I put a bar. I set bar and doors, and I said, "Unto here you shall go, and no further. And here your proud waves are set." And then we come down here then to this portion here in verses 12 to 15, where he then speaks about, Job, have you commanded the morning from your days? Have you made known to the dawn its place? Now, this is using the elements of the earth to effect retributive judgment upon the Reshaim, the wicked, to take hold of the edges of the earth, that the wicked might be shaken out from it. And then speaking about the earth, it transforms itself as clay to the seal, and you could say its individual parts stand forth as a garment. Have you gone unto the springs of the sea? Have you walked about in search of the deep? Have the gates of death been revealed to you? Have you seen the gates of the shadow of death? Where is this way that light dwells, and darkness wears its place? That you have taken it to its border. That you have discerned the paths of its house. I hope you understand that. The paths of light's house. So this is talking about the sun, and that there are paths for its house. So this is definitely talking about the sun as what's in movement, and it has its paths. And this we would understand as the sun moving about within the tropics, down in the winter solstice, December 21st. It's down there at the at the Tropic of Capricorn. Okay, and then you have the equator, and then you have the Tropic of Cancer, and the sun is just basically going back and forth between Cancer and Capricorn throughout the year, and it's just repeating itself. So these are the paths of its house. Okay, and it says, "Have you known since since you were born?" And the many days, the number of your many days. So of course Job doesn't know any of this stuff, and most of us don't either, and so we don't completely understand the troubles that we face down here on earth. And in order to do so, you would have to have the Creator's perspective. And so that just means here that the book of Job is teaching us that we just need to have faith in a good Creator that loves us, that does unfortunately allow us to go through trials and temptations, and for us to be purified, and that we are to basically live our days down here knowing that we're human and we don't know everything. But we have faith in a big God, okay? And in so doing here, he's spoken here, a lot of stuff about, where were you when I founded the earth? So this is talking about the, when God originally created the earth, and down here in verse 14 here, that the earth is pictured as, transforming itself as clay to the seal, and there's a good friend of mine, Dean Odell. He wrote his book As Clay to the Seal here, and he has a very good volume here in which he discusses this in terms of biblical cosmology. And definitely you can't say that this chapter has nothing whatsoever to do with biblical cosmology, because if you ever do look at biblical cosmology, when you look at the scholarly literature, there's Job 38 is going to be all over it. Okay, so this is very important, and these ideas that emanate here do not support in any which way some spherical type of Earth. How does a spherical Earth, who's setting down a cornerstone for it, who's stretching out a line upon it, upon what were its bases sunk? When where were you when I founded the earth? That means he founded it upon something, and it has bases. So this is definitely talking about a flat earth. Okay, and even here in verses 12 to 15, when he's talking about being able, Job's, are you able to effect a retributive judgment by means of the elements, of creation? Are you able to take hold upon the edges of the earth that the wicked may be shaken out from it? Well, only God can do that. Okay. And then in terms of, how the earth is understood, that it transforms itself as clay to a seal, and its features stand out as a garment. Well, it all makes perfect sense. We'll look at some of this stuff here in a little bit. So I wanted to bring this to you, the whirlwind. So when we saw Ezekiel, right, chapter 1, what did we see in Ezekiel chapter 1? What came out of the whirlwind, Ezekiel 1? It was the firmament. That's what came out of, that was the firmament that was stretched out above the heads of the cherubim. That was likened unto crystal. Okay, so we know that the firmament is something hard and firm, just like Josephus said, and then in Pirkei Avot, Eleazar, Rabbi de Eleazar, and we saw that, how the heavens, they go up and then they go down and they attach themselves to the earth, and so we saw all that being stated there earlier in this work that we've done. And then in the whirlwind here in Job 38, what comes out of the whirlwind but the flat earth? Okay, so we got the firmament out of Ezekiel. We got the flat earth here in Job 38. So a lot of things come out of the whirlwind, folks. And so when God speaks, and approaches, in a whirlwind, man, you just better get out of the way. Okay, then we look at these ancient cylinder seals of the ancient world of ancient Mesopotamia, and here we have the Shamash. Okay, this is the Shemesh in Hebrew is sun, and Shamash in Babylonian Akkadian is Shamash. Is that's sun. That's the word for sun. Shemesh in Hebrew, Shamash in Old Babylonian, Akkadian language. And so this here is the sun god Shamash, and this here is a Mesopotamian king coming up before the rising sun here. And this is this is a cylinder seal. And so, Job likened the earth like clay to the seal, and its features stand forth as a garment. So you could see here the clothing of whether they're depicting the sun god, Shamash, or some Mesopotamian king, and maybe some other deity here behind the king, but as clay is rolled over the seal, it's definitely looking at something that's flat, and the Earth is understood as something like this. Okay, so that was what Dean Odell was trying to bring to our attention when he wrote his book there on biblical cosmology. That I would hopefully you guys would go ahead and get that. And just to belabor the point here, and it transforms itself as clay to the seal, and its parts stand forth as a garment. So you can see here in the Ur-3 period of the Ur-3 dynasty period, which is it dates earlier than the last slide of that cylinder seal. So you can see here that the garments here, they stand forth here and as clay to the seal, to once again reinforce this idea that when they used cylinder seals or just signet impressions upon clay, then the Earth would be understood as being like clay that's been pressed down, with an image, whether it be a cylinder seal or a signet ring, that would, for whatever reason, that they were using these devices back then for various reasons. But we can understand here that the Earth would be understood as flat, and it's the features of the Earth stand forth as a garment, looking at different aspects of nature. So this is all very important, just as historical cultural backgrounds, kind of understanding the Bible and its cultural milieu and what words meant to the original readers and the intention of the authors here. And this is, we're talking about God speaking here. All right. Okay, then coming then to this slide, just wrapping this up, I'm just going to maybe share a little bit of you about my journey into flat Earth here. It goes back, I didn't really start coming into flat Earth until about, 2016, maybe somewhat a little bit late. But it had a lot to do with my old professor here, Tammy Schneider, over at Claremont. And one of the classes that we had, with Dr. Schneider was a class on ancient Egypt, on Mesopotamian, ancient Near Eastern history, whether it be, Egypt or Mesopotamia. So in class, there was this thing that really that took place, that it did, at the time it didn't do anything to me, but years later, decades later, the memory of what Dr. Schneider had said in class had really got underneath my skin and got me to start looking into flat Earth a little more seriously when I was challenged with it. And it all started with, Pastor Fox years and years ago talking about, he didn't know whether he was a flat earther or he still believed in the Copernican theory of the universe and a spherical Earth, and this was 2016. I've never heard anybody talk like this. I thought he was a kook at first, and I'm going, but wow, I really, I kind of, I was listening to back then to Pastor Fox. And he, he had mentioned this, and he was actually quite serious. And I thought, wow, that's kind of weird. I want to. This sounds strange to my ears. Okay, and so I started looking around and saying, what's he talking about? People don't believe in flat Earth, do they? And I thought it was absurd. And I remember this guy, he came up, was talking about the Nile River to me. And he challenged me that, the Nile River starts down here, at Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda on the west. And this is the Nile River starts right here at Lake Victoria. And it flows north here, for 4,000 miles all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. And he told me that, hey, look, John, the Nile River it's at the equator. Okay, Lake Victoria is on the equator right here, and the Nile River starts right here. Okay, and it triggered a memory back to my class, the doctoral class that we had. And Dr. Schneider was talking about ancient Egypt, and she was quoting Herodotus that Egypt, is the gift of the Nile, because it was the famous quote that that Herodotus is accredited with, and so everyone quotes Herodotus there. And so Dr. Schneider was then talking about the topography of Egypt, that northern Egypt is lower Egypt and southern Egypt is upper Egypt, and it was all kind of like counterintuitive, but it was because the Nile River's flowing and it goes downhill all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. And then right then in class, Dr. Schneider, with both of her hands, grabbed her hair and said, "No, no, no!" I mean, she screamed, and it was just a small class. We were all kind of freaking out, and we were looking at one another, and I wasn't gonna say a word, and so there's finally this one lady in the class, the redhead. She got the the cojones to ask her, Dr. Schneider, what's going on, And she goes, I was just there. She goes, where were you? She goes, I was just at Lake Victoria with my colleagues this summer. And she said, the Nile River starts at the equator. It's on the equator. Okay, Lake Victoria. And she said, it's impossible. She said, it's impossible for the Nile River to flow from the equator to 31 degrees latitude north all the way to the Mediterranean Sea, some 4,000 miles. And so when this guy started challenging me, it triggered my memory of this freak thing that happened in class that day with Dr. Schneider. And I thought, oh my gosh, you just triggered a memory in me, and I gotta look into this, because you just got underneath my skin, because I remember my professor saying it was impossible. It was like David Weiss's, saying it's an impossible, B-A-L-L, impossible. And that's what, that's basically what Dr. Schneider was doing that day. And so finally, it took over 5 minutes to get over this. And finally this guy said, look, this is just a history class, Dr. Schneider. We're not, we're not, geophysicists. I'm sure there's an explanation for this. And so we just went on with class. Everybody forgot it, and I forgot it. And that memory was triggered 20 years later when this guy came up to me and started challenging me on about the Nile River. And if you look at this picture, this supposed satellite photo, this is the Nile here. Okay, so this is just remember, this is only, if we look up here to this top picture in the middle at the top, this picture here, okay, this part down here, this is only coming to about right here on this larger map here. Lake Victoria here is way down here, okay? And this is only, it's, you got to go, you can't see, Lake Victoria on this supposed satellite imagery. I mean, this is fake, okay? Because if you just take this right here and you complete the circle of this arc here for this globe, you'll find out that you can't fit all the continents of the world on this globe. Okay. And that goes for every the most, just right now, just pause this, get on your computer, type in picture of Florida from space, and then look at that, or if you're in Europe, type in picture of Italy from space, and then you're going to see that you'll see Italy, or you see Florida. It's really, really big. And then in the background, just like this picture, you'll see the arc of supposedly of the Earth. Okay, but if you complete the circle, then you'll know that it's just, this is just, it's CGI. It's a computer generated image slapped on a spherical object here. And that's all it. They just do me a favor. Stop this. Type in, picture of Florida from space, and it'll all come out. It'll be just like this. Okay, so they're all frauds. Okay, and this is why people don't trust NASA, and there's good reasons for it. And you can see here that Uganda, this is where the Nile River begins in Uganda here, right? This is right here where it's within the country of Uganda, where the Nile River starts here from Lake Victoria, so it's known. And this is where Dr. Schneider, she visited that summer with her friends, and she was on the equator when they came to Lake Victoria, the headwaters of the Nile, and it just hit her that day in class that it was an impossible. Okay, and that really kind of started my when that guy challenged me. That's kind of when I started thinking, well, I got to look into this, and it took me about a month because I understood right away, but to admit this to yourself, that it's really hard, because you're burning a lot of bridges when you do it. Okay, then moving on here. This is a slide here to build upon how I started giving more credence to the idea that the Earth was flat. I had to undo everything I was taught. And these plane flights that Eddie Alencar, in his book on the 16 emergency landings, about flat Earth, this Brazilian man who resides in Japan wrote some pretty important. He brought forth some articles about different plane landing, emergency landings that occurred, that challenge our, how we think the Earth, the map of how the Earth is mapped out. And there was a plane flight here from Taiwan, this little island here off of China here, and it was on a non-stop flight to Los Angeles. Okay, and in the middle of this flight, this lady, they needed to make a landing, and she was having a baby, and if you're flying nonstop on the world as we were taught growing up in school, if you're going from Taiwan here to LA, if you're on a nonstop flight and you got to make an emergency landing, where you're going to stop right here in the Hawaiian Islands, you're going to stop in Honolulu. Well, this plane didn't stop in Honolulu. It landed up here in Anchorage, Alaska, as an emergency flight. This was the emergency, and so they because the how close Alaska what was to to this plane when it was flying, from Taiwan to LA. Well, it naturally landed up here in Alaska, okay? And that confuses us because it messes with our mind, because the way that we've been, we have been taught topography and modern, cartography of the spherical Earth. But we'll see when we come to a flat Earth map, it makes a lot of sense. But let's first look here at some of the material that we can find here.
The airline's Flight 8 was traveling from Taipei, Taiwan to Los Angeles when the woman went into labor 2 months early. The flight was diverted to Anchorage, Alaska, but the baby arrived before the plane touched down.
They're disinfecting scissors, collecting buckets and blankets and whatever things that they can find.
But this week, several...
Okay, then from that last slide, we can see here that, this lady, she was pregnant and she gave birth on the plane. But I wanted you to take note here that the way that lady drew the arc of how the plane was leaving. Here's Taiwan and here's LA, and she made this big arc like this, okay? And it was to mimic, going over the globe, because it has to be round. And so that it naturally, what it did is it landed right here in Alaska. So the way that she did that was very disingenuous, so that you wouldn't think anything. But it's still, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, okay? And if you were on a globe, then you would have to be going with the arc of the Earth, but that arc would be over this line, okay, not over this line, a line going to Alaska. That would, that other part would be like that. So the whole notion here that, that they tried to make it look like, oh yeah, it just went here to Alaska. No, you would have landed here in the Hawaiian Islands if you were needed to make an emergency landing, not up here in Alaska, thousands of miles out of your way. So then, to bring some understanding for you, then here is Taiwan over here, and here's LA over here, and if you draw a straight line, guess what happens? You go right over Alaska. So when you look at the flat Earth map, it's total sense, okay? And this is what is just this. So this book that Eddie Alencar wrote, giving all these news clippings of these crazy things where these planes made these emergency landings. It's because when you look at a flat Earth map, it all makes sense. And this is the flat Earth map here. This is really where we all live. And this is the logo of the United Nations logo. This is the map of, it's hiding in plain sight. And then there's like 27 different agencies that use the flat Earth logo, just like the United Nations. But this is the real map, I think, as we know it here. And this is how we should understand here the flat Earth. So that this whole area out here is Antarctica, and you still here have this is the Tropic of Cancer, and you have the equator here. And you have the Tropic of Capricorn somewhere down here. So the sun just goes back and forth, within the tropics, going between Capricorn and Cancer. It just stays within here, in the winter, our winter time, December 21st. It's down here at the winter solstice. It's over somewhere near the equator right now, but on June 21st, it will be here at the tip of Baja California. So just like the North Pole is always frozen, so whatever the distance it is from the we'll just say from the tip of Baja to the North Pole, whatever distance this is, you take that same distance and you go south down here from the Tropic of Capricorn, and lo and behold, it's all ice. So and this land down here is where the firmament is attached to, as in Amos, that he founded it upon he founded it upon the earth. That is the upper chambers of Yahweh's heavenly palace. It's the firmament is attached firmly to the earth, and it's done so. That's why you see these. We live in like a snow globe type of an environment, in which inside of it is David's metaphorical tent and Isaiah's metaphorical tent. And then so between looking at the flat Earth map and these all these different plane flights, and understanding on the flat Earth model, and then looking at Egypt here, and the Nile River starting way down here in Uganda, okay, and ending up here. Well, Alexandria, Egypt is 31 degrees latitude north. I live in Texas. There's 3 cities. Okay, these cities are Fort Hood, Killeen, and Temple, Texas. They're 31 degrees latitude north. So if you were to take the Nile River over into our neck of the woods, to where that there was land below Texas all the way to the equator, well, then it would be like a river flowing from the equator in somewhere down in South America, flowing directly north, going downhill all the way to Temple, Texas. Well, folks, you can't do that on a spherical Earth. And if you think you can, I got a bridge to sell you, okay? So, that's just not the way things work. And so, you got to just start looking at things and how, they lied to us. And any type of, just like you don't believe in evolution, well, you shouldn't believe in astronomy, because any science that posits and makes its epistemological origins for the study of its science not based upon intelligent design of a creator, but has to describe that the origins of their field of study from a materialistic mechanistic type of an origin that can be explained by matter alone, well, then of course they're going to be wrong. So therefore, astronomy's all modern astronomy, biology. If science doesn't base its origins in God, in understanding that God created everything, well, then whatever explanation they come up with is a lie. And I'm telling you, just like you shouldn't believe in evolution, well, you should not believe in the Copernican view of astronomy either. Okay, this has been another session of Biblical Theology, Exegesis, and Hermeneutics, where meaning is always context-driven. Please like, share, please make comments, and subscribe. And if you have questions, remember, we were all Globers at one time. All of us who, have taken on more of a biblical cosmology, we all did so. And we had to start swimming upstream and against the current, and against the current scientific consensus that's out there, and definitely, if you're struggling with this, you have to just ask yourself a question. Does the Bible have its own cosmology? That's what you really got to ask yourself. Does the Bible contain a cosmology? And if it does, and of course you have to answer yes, because it starts on the first page of your Bible with a firmament. And once you understand what a firmament is, according to Ezekiel, well, it's all downhill from there. And you'll catch up. We're just way ahead of you. You just need to catch up and actually start reading your Bible and figure out whether or not you have a cosmology that was derivative from the academy, or if your cosmology is driven from the biblical text.